Tonight, nearly 50 people killed in a massacre in Papua New Guinea. Floodwaters trickle into the state's far southwest, transforming the outback landscape. Leaked emails show how Coles and Woolies have profited from rising grocery prices. And Oppenheimer triumphs at the BAFTAs, but Barbie bombs out. Good evening, Jessica Van Vonderen with ABC News. Nearly 50 people have been killed in tribal fighting in Papua New Guinea, renewing calls for Australian intervention in the country's security. It's believed to be the largest massacre of its kind in recent history. A warning: this report from PNG correspondent Tim Swanston contains confronting images and details.
Tribal violence in PNG escalates to devastating and despairing new heights. Hundreds look on as police and defence recover bodies strewn across the highway and the hillside. Nearly 50 people, tribesmen and mercenaries, were killed, believed to be ambushed on their way to carry out an attack.
The enemy said they gotten wind of their movement and were waiting for them. When they came, they got them into a trap.
This attack, believed to be the largest massacre in the Highlands in recent history, has sent shockwaves through the country.
I'm deeply moved by this. I'm very, very concerned. I'm very, very angry.
Larger numbers of both police and defence have been stationed in Enga since tribal fighting last year killed dozens. It's a traditional practice, sometimes fought over political lines, but it's been made all the more deadly in recent years through greater access to firearms.
This type of carnage is only made possible through the use of many small arms.
PNG's Police Commissioner has described the attack as domestic terrorism. Engan Governor Sir Peter Ripitas has renewed his calls for Australian intervention, including boots on the ground. Although unconstitutional, he and many others say it's in the national interest.
We remain available to provide whatever support we can in a practical way, of course, to help our friends in PNG.
The Police Commissioner and officers are flying up to the conflict zone shortly as community leaders call for calm. Tim Swanston, ABC News, Port Moresby.
The Prime Minister has rubbished opposition allegations the government has changed its border policy. The Coalition has sought to blame the arrival of 39 asylum seekers in remote WA on the Albanese government's scrapping of a visa class. Here's political reporter Nicole Hegarty.
A battle over borders.
The reason the boat got there is because the government has suspended or cancelled surveillance flights.
By definition, Peter Dutton's arguments are absurd.
Reignited by the arrival of 39 men on the shores of remote Western Australia on Friday via boat from Indonesia, now in immigration detention on Nauru as political parties trade barbs.
They've ripped a cumulative $600 million out of Operation Sovereign Borders and Border Force.
A claim disputed by the government, with the opposition relying on projected rather than real funding, something which is topped up according to need.
Peter Dutton will continue to be a cheer squad for things that actually undermine our borders.
Except for temporary protection visas, which the Albanese government has scrapped, actual policy differences on boat stopping are largely rhetorical between the government and the Coalition. Both agree on turning around asylum seeker vessels where it's safe to do so and on offshore detention. They also agree on the relative secrecy of Border Force's operations. Nicole Hegarty, ABC News, Canberra.
It's been 2 months since flooding after Tropical Cyclone Jasper caused destruction to homes and landscapes in far north Queensland. Repairs continue, but people are still displaced. Some are questioning whether their communities should be rebuilt in the same spot.
Sheets and a glow stick. A reminder of the terrifying night Alec Dunn's parents spent clinging to a tree as floodwaters ripped through their home and the surrounding landscape.
My parents were up there. They had to climb, right out these branches at one point. The water was up above the fork.
After flooding in far north Queensland from the aftermath of tropical cyclone Jasper, communities on the banks of the Bloomfield River are questioning whether they should rebuild and return.
A lot of them don't want to go back into those houses that were flooded and they had to, clamber onto the roofs and, because this is, a part of climate change. This is potentially just going to happen again and again. People from nearby Woodward are still displaced.
Woodward is always be our home, but now it's not our home. We're here in Queensland.
Living in government-provided temporary accommodation. Nearly 2 months after the initial disaster, local authorities say that efforts have shifted from the immediate clean-up to post-flood recovery. But with repairs to necessities like housing, potable water and sewerage still underway, there's a long road ahead. The Queensland Government says it's working to ensure Woodward residents can return to their homes as soon as possible, and the location of future social housing and public assets will be assessed.
Our access roads are open at the moment, but with a lot more rain we could easily be cut off again. It's finding the right places to rebuild for people. The whole valley, not even Woodward, the whole valley. I don't think it's a good idea to build in somewhere where it's just flooded.
Locals hoping for a more secure future. Megan Danzy, ABC News, Bloomfield.
Floodwaters in Queensland's remote Channel Country have reached Birdsville, turning the outback into an oasis. The water is a lifeline in one of the driest parts of the state. Locals say the flood means the region will be looking its best by the start of the tourism season.
Outback Queensland, now an inland sea. Water stretches to the horizon as it travels south through the Channel Country.
Here it comes, front of the Diamantina River flood.
This water is from rainfall hundreds of kilometres to the north, dumped by ex-tropical cyclone Kirrily weeks ago. Now it's arrived in Birdsville, moving down the spilling Diamantina River on its way to the Cutitanda Lake Eyre Basin.
Everyone's sort of coming down each day, several times a day actually, to check on the water, on the progress of it.
The Diamantina River is currently peaking at 7.6 metres. In the Channel Country, these floods are welcomed.
It's just the most unbelievable sight to have this wonderful flow of water going through, and everybody knows how good it is for this region.
After the water comes the wildlife and wildflowers.
It's a desert, the transformation, I guess, from the dry, dusty heat to, the flies, the mosquitoes, the waters, the flowers, the bugs and the insects that come with it as well.
There is, however, severe damage to the region's roads. Many may be cut for some time. But locals hope that once the water recedes, the tourists will flood in.
It really is a lifeline for us. It's nature doing what it was intended to.
Grace Nakamura, ABC Western Queensland.
Tourists on Gari are being warned to be extra vigilant as dingoes enter their mating season on the heritage-listed island. 2 women were bitten by dingoes during separate tours of the island on Sunday. Dingoes breed from now until May, wandering the island in search of a mate. Rangers say walking with a stick helps reduce the risk of attack.
If you've got a stick with you, then generally they won't approach you, and it also allows you to get yourself to safety if you need to.
The sole surviving guest from a deadly lunch in regional Victoria has spoken publicly for the first time, 6 months after the deaths of his family members. Pastor Ian Wilkinson spent several weeks recovering in hospital after the lunch at the South Gippsland home of Erin Patterson in July last year. His wife Heather, her sister Gail Patterson and Gail's husband Don Patterson all died about a week after the meal. Ms Patterson has been charged with 3 counts of murder and 5 counts of attempted murder. Addressing his local Baptist church, Pastor Wilkinson said it had been a difficult time.
Let me encourage you to keep on going. The way is sometimes hard, but God is good. He is with us. He promised never to leave or forsake us. And I can say that is true.
In tonight's Four Corners, leaked emails and insiders have revealed how Coles and Woolworths have been profiting from higher prices at the checkout. That's despite repeated assurances from the supermarket giants that they're doing everything in their power to keep grocery bills down.
They're two of Australia's most trusted brands, but the past year has tested shoppers' loyalty to the supermarket giants.
This just cost me almost $400. This is an absolute joke.
Both Coles and Woolworths insist they're not profiteering from inflation, only passing on the necessary cost increases. But industry insiders have a different view.
It's absolutely ridiculous. The margins that they make, the tactics that they deploy.
This man, who asked not to be identified, works for a multinational company selling products into Coles. He says when he tried to negotiate a price increase of around 5% last year, Coles initially rejected the rise, saying it would impact on the supermarket's bottom line.
We ended up giving a lump sum of money to get the price increase through, which was accepted in full.
That lump sum was $25,000.
So you're saying that they will validate your price increase if you give them either more margin or a lump sum of money?
Correct.
The Coles CEO says the supermarket doesn't operate like this.
So you have an email from one supplier. We have over 8,000 suppliers that we work with. We have a team of people whose job it is to look to validate cost price increases, and we take that job very seriously.
He says that's the definition of price gouging. Is that the case?
We don't engage in practices like that.
Another insider says Woolworths also tried to get a greater slice of any negotiated increases. It asked for a percentage of the price rise to be paid back as a rebate. Woolworths denies this.
When a supplier asks for a price increase, we would like to engage to make sure it's based on true cost increases. And so, we're very keen to make sure we don't pass on anything more to our customers than is required.
And very keen to win back their customers' trust. Angus Grigg, ABC News.
Israel has set a deadline for its fresh ground offensive into Rafah in Gaza's south, with fears for the estimated 1.4 million Palestinians sheltering there. From Jerusalem, here's the ABC's Global Affairs editor, John Lyons.
The crisis in Gaza looks set to escalate. A key member of Israel's war cabinet, Benny Gantz, has set a deadline now of Ramadan, March the 10th, by which all remaining hostages in Gaza must be released. Now there's about 1.4 million people who are crowding into Rafah, which is up in the south of Gaza, up against the border with Egypt. They've moved there because of the fighting in the north and the centre, and Israel had urged them to move away from the fighting. But now, if Israel is considering going into Rafah, then the great problem is what happens, where do those 1.4 million people go? President Biden has said there should be no incursion by Israel unless there is a credible evacuation plan. And the Norwegian Refugee Council is warning of a potential bloodbath. But Israel is making clear that it is intending to go into Rafah. It's surrounded Rafah already. It is making further preparations, and it is saying that there should be now moves for those people to evacuate.
John Lyons reporting. Supporters of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny are continuing to risk arrest by laying tributes following his sudden death. People dressed in black could be seen removing flowers from a makeshift memorial in St. Petersburg, but they were quickly replaced by new ones. Mr. Navalny died in prison last week, where he was serving a 19-year sentence. His followers believe he was murdered on the order of President Vladimir Putin. Mr. Navalny's wife is expected to meet with EU ministers in Brussels in coming days, who say they want to honour her husband's memory. Severe sandstorms and heavy snowfall have swept across parts of northern China, leaving thousands of people stranded. A thick layer of yellow cloud is blanketing buildings and highways in several cities, with many people forced to abandon their vehicles. In some areas, the sand and dust has reduced visibility to just 100 metres. Chinese authorities have warned the conditions could last for several days. Hollywood stars have descended on London for the British Academy Film Awards, dominated by Oppenheimer. The historical biopic about the man behind the atomic bomb won 7 of the 13 awards it was nominated for. Barbie, the biggest blockbuster of the year, and all Australian nominees went home empty-handed.
I don't know if we can be trusted.
And the BAFTA goes to Oppenheimer.
A 3-hour epic about the creation of the atom bomb was the night's big winner.
Christopher Nolan.
Cillian Murphy.
Oppenheimer won 7 BAFTAs, including Best Picture, Director and Leading Actor for Cillian Murphy.
Let's make sure we're not the ones to make that possible.
The film, which earned more than $1 billion at the box office, dominated the Golden Globes and Critics' Choice Awards and has now cemented its status as the front-runner for Oscars glory.
Hi, Ken. Hi, Barbie.
Last year's top-grossing film, Barbie, and Australian actress Margot Robbie were again snubbed. It was nominated for 5 BAFTAs, but got none. Robbie, who channeled the doll on the red carpet, lost out to Emma Stone, who won Leading Actress for Poor Things.
Good evening.
Her brain and her body are not quite synchronised.
The Frankenstein-esque fantasy took 5 prizes.
I just thought that maybe I could help.
Australian Jacob Elordi from the psychological thriller Saltburn also missed out.
We still have enough votes.
With Robert Downey Jr. taking out Best Supporting Actor.
Maybe we've done all that.
He also missed out on the Rising Star Award along with Australian actress Sophie Wilde.
Talk to me.
It is no exaggeration to say this room has in it the greatest actors in the world.
The BAFTAs really are Britain's night of night when it comes to the world of cinema, and the awards handed out here are often seen as a good indication of what can be expected at the Oscars next month. Movie fans around the world will have been watching to see how their favourites fared. Guest of honour was Prince William in his role as president of the BAFTAs. He arrived without his wife Catherine, who's recovering from surgery. Flashback. There were musical performances and a dog named Bart Ruffalo.
This is fine. This is fine.
The war has begun, and we have to tell its story.
But the razzle-dazzle took a backstage when a press team's account of the siege of Mariupol in Ukraine took out Best Documentary.
Conflicted, yeah. It's a huge honor. It's a huge responsibility, and we are so grateful for recognizing our work. But still, I keep thinking about Ukraine. I keep thinking about what is happening there right now.
With the glamour and the gongs of Britain's biggest night for films over, contenders are waiting to see if the Oscars will be a repeat performance. Michelle Rimmer, ABC News, London.
The world's biggest pop star, Taylor Swift, has made it to Sydney for the last leg of her Australian tour. Plenty of Queenslanders fortunate enough to get tickets are expected to head south for the show.
After taking Melbourne by storm, Taylor Swift flew her private jet into an intense summer storm in Sydney. 8-year-old Swiftie Viv Garrett braved the rain to get a glimpse of her hero.
I still really want to see her because my mum tried to get tickets and she had 5 devices but she couldn't.
She's among millions of Australians who missed out.
I would be happy to go, but I didn't get a ticket, like most people.
She kind of transcends age and to an extent gender, but at the concert on Friday, there were little tiny kids through to grandparents.
Taylor Swift arrived at her hotel in Barangaroo this afternoon without too much fanfare.
I love her. She's so kind with the fans and she's always so grateful to have the fans.
Swift's boyfriend, NFL player Travis Kelce, has teased fans, suggesting he may be joining her.
About to go venture myself over to an island here soon. Which way are you going? Where are you going? I don't know. I think the best ones are south right now, though, so I'm going to go south. Yeah.
Swift is performing 4 concerts in Sydney. Fans will be taken on a 3-hour-long journey spanning her 18-year career and 10 studio albums.
The star says she typically has a dead day to recover between legs of a tour. And what better weather to do nothing in than this? It's not clear how she'll spend the next 3 days before her first show in Sydney on Friday.
They're wasting no time preparing for the 80,000 fans heading to Homebush on the first night. Xanthi Gregory, ABC News, Sydney.
Sydney's Star Casino will face a second inquiry less than 18 months after a damning report found it was unfit to hold a casino licence. The Independent Casino Commission says it's concerned the Star hasn't done enough to clean up its act, since it was found to have become a haven for organised crime, money laundering and fraud. Star Entertainment Group shares were placed in a trading halt ahead of the announcement, which comes just a day before it's due to deliver its half-yearly results. The new inquiry will run for 15 weeks. To Finance Now, and Westpac shares went up today, even though the bank's profit fell, while the market as a whole was flat. Here's Alan Kohler.
Westpac's half-yearly profit fell 6% to $1.6 billion. But investors were obviously expecting worse, so the share price went up. They drank in A2 Milk's 15% lift in profit, didn't want to hear about Cochlear's 35% profit increase, and weren't really loving BlueScope's plan to take Colourblind roofing to the United States. All up, the market finished 0.1% higher, after falls in New York, Tokyo and Hong Kong. Now, there's a lot of nervousness at the moment that the US tech sector, embodied in the Nasdaq index, is in a bubble and might be about to crash. And as Crocodile Dundee might say of the Nasdaq in 1999-2000, that's not a bubble, this is a bubble. Or is it? The difference is that the big tech firms, known collectively now as the Magnificent Seven, that is Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia and Tesla, are actually making tons of money, unlike the ones that went nuts in the late 90s. In fact, they're basically responsible for all the profit growth in the world. Is it enough to justify these share prices? Well, not yet. It depends on how profitable artificial intelligence turns out to be. Commodity prices all rose over the weekend, and the Australian dollar stayed where it was, around 65.5 US cents. And that's finance.
Coming up on 7:30 with Sarah Ferguson, the Swiftie hype continues.
This is a true global phenomenon moment.
Taylor Swift has made her amazing fan base become this community of people.
For some reason, we want to hear these songs again and again.
And I'll speak to Stella Assange ahead of her husband Julian's last attempt to prevent his extradition from the UK to the US.
Australia has won 2 gold medals on the final night of competition at the World Aquatics Championships in Doha. 20-year-old Isaac Cooper was disorientated by the curved roof and used the lane rope as a guide on his way to victory in the 50 metres backstroke. In the last event of the championships, the team of Iona Anderson, Abby Harkin, Brianna Throssell and Shayna Jack was victorious in the 4x100 medley relay. The Australian swim team finished the meet with 3 golds, 9 silver and 4 bronze, to be third on the medal tally behind the US and China.
Oh, we definitely are in a great position. For us coming here, a lot of us want to just get some experience and race as much as we can for our country, and that's exactly what we did.
Australian Open champion Jannik Sinner has continued his winning form with a victory over Alex de Minaur in the final of the Rotterdam Open. Sinner was victorious 7-5, 6-4 and is yet to lose to the Australian in their 7 meetings. After winning 15 tour matches in a row, the Italian will rise to number 3 in the world. De Minaur will achieve a career high ranking of 9 and was encouraged by his performance.
I played right now the best player in the world, right? On form and everything, and I was very close. Chances here, chances there.
The Queensland Premier has declared Canberra is an awful place, reigniting debate over the relocation of the Australian Institute of Sport. The federal government recently announced the AIS would remain in Canberra after a review dismissed a proposal to move it to Queensland. The review found it would cost $1 billion to move the facility, while an upgrade of the existing site would provide the most certainty for athletes ahead of the 2032 Brisbane Olympics. The decision has disappointed some in favour of a move north.
Canberra's an awful place. Who'd want to go to Canberra? Why would we send our best athletes to Canberra when they could be here in Queensland experiencing the superior weather here, the great lifestyle, and of course the fantastic economy, which means that they can have jobs for those who are still working too.
An Olympian's cheeky outfit for a costume competition has caused a stir in the equestrian world. Three-time Olympic medalist Shane Rose was stood down from competition in regional New South Wales after someone complained about him wearing a mankini on horseback. Late today, he was given the all clear.
It was bareback riding, but with a saddle.
That's Australian.
Shane Rose didn't mean to scare the horses when he entered a fancy dress competition at the Wallaby Hill Extravaganza.
I didn't win, but I was certainly in the finalists.
This was his original outfit, but he decided less was more.
Not the most comfortable equipment off a horse. And becomes less comfortable on a horse.
The discomfort wasn't limited to the veteran equestrian. One spectator was so offended they complained to Equestrian Australia, which launched an inquiry. But within the day, they concluded the code of conduct wasn't breached. The panel took into account the community event that Mr Rose was competing at and that Mr Rose had already made a public apology. It means the 50-year-old Olympic medalist has the all clear to compete in New Zealand next month, taking him one step closer to his 4th Games in Paris.
Yeah, I've got a very experienced horse that has to do a qualifying event in the 6 months leading up to the Games.
He's been fielding interview requests all day as his plight made global headlines and garnered widespread exposure for the sport.
I had somebody say, I've never been interested in horses, but this is the first thing that's actually got me interested in it.
Shane's now looking forward to the tail end of the mankini mania. Carl Herr, ABC News.
Weather now with Jenny Woodward, and another wet day, Jenny.
Yes, Jess, we've had a lot of storm activity. Hello, everyone. We've seen some very heavy rain rates in the southeast, 50 to 60 millimetres in just an hour on the Gold Coast hinterland. Mount Tambourine's had 72 millimetres today, and Highfields had 49 millimetres, and that was just in an hour too. Now, new warnings have popped up over the Downs just in the last hour or so, and we have another warning which was up in the northwest, but that's now been cancelled. To our stunning photos, and Jeff was treated to this spectacular display on his walk to work in Barcaldine this morning, while Trish watched the storm clouds gather over the Mary Valley this afternoon. And earlier in the week, Rowan was rewarded with this fabulous view after hiking to Mount Cordeo out on the main range. Well, temperatures a little bit below average under the cloud cover today in the southeast, just 24 in Applethorpe this afternoon, and also the same story up at Burketown, 32 there today, but still above average in the west, 41 at Ballera Gas. But look at the minimum, 14 this morning in Kingaroy. Perhaps autumn is not too far away. A sunny start to the day in the city. Temperatures got to 29 degrees just after 11 a.m, but then the cloud and the rain moved in, but it's still quite warm, 24 degrees. Onto the satellite, and here's ex-tropical cyclone Lincoln. It's near the WA Northern Territory border, and you can see there's a lot of cloud extending out over the east and over Queensland. It's expected to continue moving west and eventually moved offshore and redevelop into a cyclone and then curve back to cross the coast later in the weekend. And we've got an upper trough system moving over southeast Queensland, which has fired up the storm activity. Tomorrow, Perth's heading for 39 degrees, 35 for Adelaide, but there'll be showers in Canberra and some storms are expected in Sydney. Onto the chart, and further scattered showers and storms persisting in the tropics, even though the monsoon has eased. Plenty of showers about the coastal fringe too, especially in the southeast and also on the tropical coast. Rolling Stone had 77 millimetres last night, and the upper trough that brought the rain to the southeast will head offshore tomorrow. So although it will remain unsettled, we'll still have some showers and storms about. And there's another system on later in the week, more storms expected in the southeast on the weekend. Let's check forecasts now, and showers and storms right across the north, 30 for Mareeba, 32 in Cairns. Highlands. A sunny start for the southwest of the state, but some cloud further east, and we've got showers and storms expected, particularly around the Carnarvons, 34 for Roma. Showers and storms about the southeast too, 26 in Toowoomba, 29 for Kingaroy, and showers and the chance of a storm for the city, but only very light falls expected, 21 to 29 degrees in the city. Ipswich is heading for 31. Seas under a metre on the bay with east-southeasterlies below 10 knots, and conditions are going to remain much the same for the week ahead, unsettled with the chance of some showers and storms. But Jess, we could see some bigger totals on Saturday.
Okay, a wet weekend ahead maybe. Jenny, thank you. That is ABC News to the moment. Time for 7:30. Good night.
Good night.